Coming up, rocket launches.
Rocket pads.
And rocket contracts.
And this week for our main topic, we crowdsourced that. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now. And welcome to Tomorrow, episode 8.30 for Saturday, October 17th, 2015. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is the beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham, and we'll be your host for this episode. I got through it. No laughing. I got all the way through it.
Slurry and everything.
Slurry and everything. Now, before we get started, a huge shout out to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who've helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are the people who've contributed $10 or more to this specific episode. If you'd like to help crowdfund the shows tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. We are a crowdfunded show. Every single dollar helps, and we have different reward levels. It's really awesome. All right, let's go ahead and get started with some space news. First up, we have a Chinese launch of a Long March 2D. Whoosh, there she goes. That happened Wednesday, October 7th at 2015 at 4:13 Coordinated Universal Time. That was, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, the Jilin-1 satellites, which were 4 satellites. They're basically going to be doing high-resolution imagery. It's going to be taking high-definition video as well and doing some Earth observation. And actually, Detta, I think I have a picture. Oh, there, look at you go. That is the larger, actually the largest of the satellites, about the size of a compact car, has a top resolution of about 0.7 meters or 2.3 feet when it's in black and white mode. The other two are going to be, like I said, the video capture, and then there's one more for engineering tests. That launched out of China, like I said, October 7th.
Awesome. And
moving along, we're going to head over to Mike for some more launches.
That's right. The United Launch Alliance launched a Atlas V rocket, the second one in just 6 days, and this rocket was launching for the National Reconnaissance Office. So let's watch some of that footage of the launch.
3, 2, we have RD-180 ignition, and we have liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket carrying the NRO L-55 mission for the National Reconnaissance Office.
This launch took place on October 9th at 12:49 Universal Coordinated Time. And with this launch, because it is a classified payload, we don't know for sure what the payloads were, but a lot of the clues that are put forward before this launch indicate that there are 2 satellites that are at a really high inclination orbit of about 63 degrees and in a low Earth orbit at about only 700 miles up. And with this inclination, the theory is that these are ocean observation satellites, specifically to watch for enemy warships or any type of ship activity in or around coastal waters as well as international waters. So this is a very interesting launch, and congratulations to United Launch Alliance for being able to launch these Atlas rockets so frequently. And again, another beautiful night launch for this. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to you guys now because we have some more launches to talk about.
more launches, because that's, I feel like all of our space news anymore is just launch after launch after launch
Kind of,
after
except
launch.
that if you notice our launch calendar, no
Yeah.
launches this week.
All right.
So next week's
I'm
show will
almost
not
happy
be a
about that.
launch-isode. Yeah,
Good.
exactly.
Hey,
Yes.
last week we had 2 pages of launches, so we had
Yeah.
to catch up with it.
Last show, not last week, but
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
That's right. Yeah,
Crazy
last
pants.
show. Excuse me.
So we had a Proton rocket launch with the Turksat 4B, from October.
4B.
On October 16, 2015, at 2040 UTC or 4:40 p.m. Eastern Time. I believe we have some launch footage.
And we have ignition.
Or explosion. These always freak me out.
And we have liftoff of an ILS Proton from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan with the Turksat 4B satellite on board.
It's pretty cool.
public fair officer didn't really seem too jazzed about the land. We have liftoff.
There's not a lot to say about this one. This is a Proton M
rocket.
launch vehicle lifted off from Pad 39 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan for the Turksat 4B satellite on board. This was utilizing the 5-burn Breeze M mission design. I got that. There's actually this really great graphic on the International Launch Services website, which is ilslaunch.com, that gives you the times and the burns, the times of the burns, and it's like this huge graphic, so it breaks apart the entire vehicle.
That's cool.
Again, yeah, it's actually really interesting. And something else, and I'm not kidding, totally not making this up, also on the International Launch Services website, again, ilslaunch.com in case you're interested, for each of their launches, they have a Twitter hashtag.
Really?
Yes, swear. And the Twitter hashtag for this one was Turksat4B, which, I mean, makes sense. It's a very logical thing. As Jared Head, our chief astronomer here tomorrow, pointed out, this was a Russian launch with a Japanese satellite for Turkish communications. It was a Japanese Mitsubishi Electric company is going to be doing communications for Europe, Central Asia, including the Turkish territory, which is kind of a cool sort of international launchy thing going on there, I thought.
So I get another Chinese launch, and these are actually done in order. So if everyone's ever noticed, the order in which we do launches is usually oldest to newest every episode. That's what dictates the order of our launch coverage. And so I just happened to get another Chinese launch. Now, I tried to find...
China's launching.
They are. Oh, man, their launch cadence is insane. I tried to get some official launch footage from China. That was impossible. So instead, this is a Long March 3B, has a communications. It's the AppStar 9. This is footage of that launch from someone who just is nearby. And I'd like to point out, notice how quickly the sound wave hits the camera, indicating distance away or lack thereof. Check it out.
Ooh.
They're a wee bit closer to that than they allow you to get to say shuttle.
I'd imagine, yeah.
That happened on Friday, October 16th, 2015 at 16:16 Coordinated Universal Time. Like I said, that was the AppStar 9 telecom satellite. It's going to be broadcasting television to consumers across the Asia-Pacific area. It's also, if you're taking a cruise over in the Asia-Pacific area, it's going to be what's giving ships and airplanes internet access, so that'll be kind of cool. So maybe you'll get a little better internet on your cruise ship. Neat. / if you're flying, maybe better internet on your airplane. It's a 15-year mission. It's going to be replacing the old AppStar 9A satellite that's been in orbit since 1998. All right, let's head it back over to Mike and talk about United Launch Alliance and their pads.
That's right. United Launch Alliance has made a pretty big decision about what their future launch pads are going to be for the Vulcan rocket. And what they have decided is to use the existing Atlas V launch pads on the East Coast and on the West Coast. At the East Coast, they're going to use Space Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral. On the West Coast, they're going to use Space Launch Complex 3E at Vandenberg Air Force Base. And with the Vulcan rocket, with United Launch Alliance, a big part of their costs, and the reason why their launches are so expensive is because of the operating costs of their launch pads. And they don't just have the 2 for Atlas V, there's 3 additional ones for Delta as well. And with this announcement, pretty much what they're saying is that once the Delta family of rockets is retired, which is going to be starting in the 2017s and all the way through the 2020s until all of the Deltas, Delta 2, Delta 4, and Delta Heavy have all flown. And of course, they're going to be retiring the Atlas V rocket during this time as well. And so by bringing down their costs from having to maintain 5 pads at once, even if there's not launches ongoing from those pads, they will be able to bring the cost hopefully down quite a bit and be able to compete with some of their competitors, SpaceX. So this could actually be a really big deal for United Launch Alliance to be able to help bring their costs down for the Vulcan rocket once it's flying. And even if whatever design path they follow, whether whether they decide to go with Blue Origin's BE4 engine or Aerojet Rocketdyne's AR1 engine. Either way, they could potentially save a lot of money, whichever version of their future rocket they decide to go with. So this is some good news, kind of not too much of a surprise, but there was a lot of concern going around as to, well, what are you guys going to use? Are you going to modify the existing pads, or are you going to be building new ones? You know, it's all about how much money this is going to take, and the more money it takes, the longer it takes for really cool stuff to happen. So this hopefully might speed the process up a bit for United Launch Alliance and their Vulcan rocket. So
you know what I find
very
interesting? Cool. They chose the Atlas pads as opposed to the Delta pads, but the Atlas is their workhorse. They fly a lot more Atlas rockets than they do Delta rockets. So it logically you would think it'd be easier for them to convert a Delta pad than an Atlas pad because they'd have more downtime in between to do it. So there must be some characteristic of the Atlas pad that makes it cheaper or more cost-effective or easier for them to use that over a Delta pad.
And that I don't know, but I do have a feeling that it has something to do with the fuels. Whether or not they decide to go with the methane fuel for the BE4 engine, Blue Origin's engine, they would have to do quite a bit of modifications, but not as much as they would for some of the Delta pads. And if they go with Aerojet Rocketdyne's AR1 engine, then they don't necessarily have to change a whole lot about the type of fuels that they can store and be able to fuel right there at the pad. So again, that's another money question as to which way they want to go. It's looking more like they're going to go with Blue Origin and will make those modifications. But from what I have been able to gather from this, it would be easier to reconvert the Atlas pads than it would the Delta pads. And they didn't say exactly what's going to happen to the Delta pads either. So is that going to be leased out to new customers? Is the Air Force going to want to use those a lot more? So that's going to be something that we're going to have to find out in the future as to what's going to happen to the Delta pads after United Launch Alliance is done with them.
It could also have something to do with the similarity in the rockets in size and shape and how they're handled as to the extent of the modifications that are required in order to be able to handle those rockets. If the Atlas V is very similar in size and shape, and the infrastructure needed to support it to what Vulcan would need, then it would be easier to convert those pads rather than basically starting from scratch with a Delta pad or a Delta Heavy pad or something like that.
Makes sense?
Yeah, it's a good point.
All right. Let's, I'd say one other thing with the Vulcan, for those who don't know, it's actually a quarter-by-quarter rocket. So it is a rocket that gets approved by parent companies Boeing and Lockheed each quarter. They extend it, say, yep, we're going to continue the process of this, yep, we're going to continue the process of this. So the fact that we've got to the point where we're like, we have the base design, we now know what pads we're going to use, that's a good thing. It kind of points to a continuation of the quarter by quarter, pushing forward and continuing to go, make Vulcan go.
That's right.
Yeah. All right.
Speaking of rockets that are going to launch in the future.
That's you.
Yes, that is me. I have to apologize really quickly because we only have this one graphic, which is Virgin Galactic. But I decided to change the story last minute about to focus a little bit on all of the Venture class launch services contracts that NASA has awarded, one of which went to Virgin Galactic. Here you can see and this is
what is the Venture class launch services contract?
So it's what NASA wants to do is continue to have. They want to continue to do research and development concerning small sats, cubesats, microsats, nanosatellites, that sort of thing. And a lot of times those satellites are hitching a ride with other satellites or other payloads on much bigger rockets. I suppose not Vulcan necessarily, but like Atlas, Delta, Falcon, those sorts of things.
If I could interject here,
yes.
Actually on the Atlas V launch that launched toward the NRO, they had this really cool thing called Grace, which is on the back end of the Centaur upper stage that releases a bunch of CubeSats. And I didn't want to go into it because there was like 12 really interesting CubeSats that additionally launched on that mission, some of them for the Air Force and some of them for NASA. So that's exactly what you're talking about, of hitching rides on that. But again, there's not a whole lot that are available.
Precisely. So what NASA wants, and what anyone who's launching the CubeSats want, is to basically have their own ride for the most part. So there's a lot of these smaller rockets that are coming out, like the Launcher One that you saw the picture of, Firefly Space Systems that we have interviewed, Rocket Labs USA. All of these people have won contracts. So Firefly Space Systems out of Cedar Park, Texas got $5.5 million. Rocket Labs USA out of Los Angeles got $6.9 million. And Virgin Galactic LLC out of Long Beach, California got $4.7 million, all from NASA, to continue to work on these much smaller, and I don't want to say much smaller rockets, but smaller rockets that typically aren't available to launch such things like the CubeSats, microsats, nanosats, specifically, and easy access to low Earth orbit instead of ride sharing. A lot of the CubeSats, as mentioned before, will be a lot of research and development, the precursor to instruments like laser communication, satellite-to-satellite communication, and autonomous movement capabilities. So, that can help increase a number of different things. You're talking about Wi-Fi when you're on cruises, possibly in planes, but it can also do weather analysis, ocean analysis, all of that kind of stuff. So they're going to try, that's what this entire program is for. That's where all that money is going to create these launchers, to support these launchers for the smaller sats. Does that help?
Yeah,
Make sense?
absolutely.
Yay.
There you go. So a lot of company getting decent amounts of money to help spur this new small sat. Well, the small sat industry is already there.
Yeah,
it's really the small sat launcher industry.
Yeah.
I guess that it's really trying to help at this point, specifically that. All right, moving along. You were kind of talking. You showed the Virgin Galactic Launcher One graphic. Well, here is a hot fire test, a 90-second hot fire test. We're not going to show all 90 seconds because you get the idea after like 5 seconds. But of their new NewtonThree engine. Check this out. So the NewtonThree is what's going to be powering the first stage of Launcher One. This, like I said, was a 90-second test, which is 4.5 times longer than their previous test. This is a chemical rocket, as opposed to what they're doing right now, which is on Spaceship Two, is a solid rocket, a hybrid rocket. It's a hybrid rocket motor, and so this is what will be pushing payloads into space on that first stage. There is a possibility that they can adapt this and put this into Spaceship Two, but probably not right away. We're probably going to continue to see Spaceship Two working on that hybrid model, and then eventually, someday, maybe moving it over to the liquid rocket phase that you see right here. So, really great test. 90 seconds of hot fire. Not an easy test to accomplish, and I'm trying to see if I can't talk long enough so that we get... You have any idea how much longer is left in the clip? 32 seconds?
Okay, well, but did you mention that it was 4.5 times longer than the longest previous hot fire?
I did. Should we just mention everything one more time?
Sure. This was the engines that will be used for Launcher One, which is very exciting.
First stage of Launcher One.
First stage Launcher One,
Because as you saw in that previous graphic, there are multiple... How much longer, Dota? 10 seconds, there are multiple graphics.
I don't know why it's called NewtonThree. Somebody was asking about NewtonThree, but I don't know what it is. But
4,
it is really pretty, though.
2,
Cut off. There you go. Woo, all right, all the way through the entire test. You got all 90 seconds.
Oh, man.
Goodness.
All right, Mike.
It makes me wonder.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, it makes me wonder if they're called newtons for anything to have to do with kilonewtons of thrust or something like that. I don't know. That's just my idea.
Yeah, I don't understand their particular, what am I trying to say, naming convention quite yet. But I'm sure we'll figure it out. Or you know what? Maybe we'll never figure it out at that point. Who knows? Some of them I have no idea. All
right, Mike. Let's head it back to you so you can talk about flight manifest-y kind of things.
Ooh.
So SpaceX has changed the payload for their return to flight on their new enhanced Falcon 9 booster. It was going to be an SES communication satellite, but now it is going to be a constellation of Orbcomm satellites. These are the Orbcomm OG2 satellites, and for this particular flight, they are going to be launching about 11 of these OG2 satellites. And this kind of comes as a surprise because SES SES in the past has really stood by SpaceX and been willing to take risks with SpaceX trying out new things and having enhancements and upgrades on their rockets. And so this is kind of an interesting change that Orbcomm is now going to be the customer on that return to flight. However, this might have been SpaceX's idea to begin with. And the reason for that is because the SES communications satellite needs to be put into a higher geosynchronous orbit. And to do that, they need to relight the upper stage engine before the payload is deployed to be able to get it into the right insertion to get into geostationary orbit. And so with this, they are also making enhancements not just on the first stage, but also on the upper stage of the Falcon 9 as well. So with this launch, they're going to be launching these Orbcomm communication satellites into a lower orbit. I'm not exactly sure what the orbit is going to be, some of it in low Earth orbit, probably medium Earth orbit, but they are not going to have to go that high. So once they release the payload and these constellations go to where they need to go, they're going to test a relight of the upper stage to make sure that they have everything worked out and see if there are any additional problems or bugs that they need to work out before they actually need to send a satellite into geostationary orbit or into further destinations. So this is a kind of a cool thing to be able to not only test out this newer enhanced version of the first stage, but also of the upper stage as well, and make sure that with the changes that they've made that SpaceX can still do a relight of the upper stage engine and deliver payloads into further and more distant destinations. So that's pretty cool, and that's all I have for you.
All right, thank you so much, Space Mike. Now we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, our main topic, we weren't entirely sure what to do for a main topic, so we tweeted out today.
We did all of them.
We said we're not entirely sure what to do for a main topic, so I got multiple Twitter responses, and we're going to do I'm not sure which ones yet.
It's going to be a quick fire.
It's going to, yeah, exactly. It's going to be a really short middle segment, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled on some expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
And welcome back. Now, before we get started with our main topics today, I'd like to thank all of the patrons of tomorrow who've helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are the people who've contributed $5 or more to this specific episode. To find out how you can help crowdfund the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. All right. We had a few different replies. Now, the first one I thought of is why reusability is important. Another one that was brought up from TWicked is the small payloads launch market, the dot-com bubble of the space industry. I think that's actually pretty apt. Yeah, I got a little head nod out of, not Dutta, what's his name, Mike?
The other Dutta.
The other Dutta. What you are hereby referred to as other Dutta from here on out. And then Lisa, Mini Stoge, Lisa said, debate topic, should Australia have a space agency? I don't really think there's a debate. Obviously, they shouldn't. They're not allowed to.
What? No, of course they should.
Ready? No. All right, next. Look, New Zealand already does, okay? What more do you want?
What's Australia going to bring, really? No, actually, I mean, I think everyone thinks everyone should have a space industry and a space agency. So, yeah, of course they should have a space agency. If that's...
There clearly is enough space to go around, so...
So let's start with TWicked's, the small payload launch market. So we had the dot-com bubble and then burst of the, what was it, early aughts, early 2000s?
Early aughts, right in there somewhere, yeah.
And that was pretty nasty. So in the space industry, we're kind of talking about these small sats, these nanosat launchers, these teeny tiny little things.
It does seem like it's the cool new thing to do.
It's the hip thing in the aerospace industry to launch these small little satellites and launch maybe lots of them or whatever the case may be. And so you've got this new launcher market that's coming out of this. Vax Headroom, I think it was last week, or not last week, but a couple weeks ago, said he counted 22 small sat launchers,
something
either
like that,
in
yeah.
development or
are real.
developed. Yeah, exactly. 22. That seems obsessive. So is And we haven't even proved there's a market here yet. So it's a really great question. Is this small sat market going to be a bust after we kind of get the initial load of small sats out there and then people go, okay, well, now what?
I feel like I don't care if it's a bust or not.
Okay.
Because I feel as though, while you say that we haven't proven that there's a market for small sat launchers quite yet, I feel like there probably is. That's why all these people are doing it. But I also feel as though we'll kind of come down and either the first couple of people on the market will be that'll be sort of be the end all and everyone else will sort of fall away, or there'll be one or two more companies that come about and say, well, yeah, but you could kind of do this better, and then maybe have a better way or more niche way of doing it for particular satellites, small satellites. And I think we'll kind of come down to what we basically sort of have now for our larger launchers as well. We'll have 4 or 5 companies tops that are sort of doing it, and then it's just kind of them. And so you are closer to this company, or you're closer to this country, or what have you. You'll end up sort of funneling through down to those sort of smaller launcher providers, if you will. Sure. So right now it feels like there's 22 or so. I think that eventually it'll get whittled down pretty quickly.
But wasn't this kind of, we had SpaceX with the Falcon 1. They were going to kind of be the small sat launch provider.
SpaceX has always said from the very beginning they want to get to Mars. Launching small satellites isn't getting anybody to Mars.
No, but they were going to use that money, and they just didn't see the money there, is my understanding. So, Mike, what's your opinion on the market? Is this just a fad, or is it going to be something that hangs around for a while?
Well, I don't know enough about all of the different concepts. I mean, I am familiar with some of them, but probably only about half a dozen of them. And, I rule out a lot of ideas if they're just paper rockets, even if it sounds like a really good idea, until there's actually, something to show that whatever their idea is would work. I think that the only way that a small satellite launcher industry would work is if the cost is extremely cheap. I mean, you can have any university project building a pretty advanced 3-unit CubeSat for under $15,000. If you could also have the launch for around the same price and just, satellite and launch, for under $30,000, then yeah, there would be a market there and they'd be launching all the time. And we would need 22 or more providers to do that, to fill up this sort of need. Because, I mean, there's tons of satellites that universities and schools did give the budget to be able to do, and they didn't use up that entire budget on the CubeSat itself. Sure, a lot of these were just engineering projects, but I mean, there's already a ton of payloads that could be launched at any time if the rockets existed and it was cheap enough. That's the whole thing. So I think if you have something that, and Falcon 1 I think is like the heavy class of the small satellite launcher. Totally. Yeah. But even if you had something that is like what Firefly Space Systems or Rocket Labs are doing, if I can get one of those and launch several small satellites, several CubeSats or nanosats at once, and the entire launch costs less than like $100,000, then they stand to make a lot of money and do a lot of launches and have a lot of business. But if it still costs $10 to $300 million even for that small rocket, again, they're not going to have any customers. It's not going to work out. No one is going to be able to afford that. That's my opinion.
I don't think that the price point's $10 million. I don't think it's as low. I thought the price point on these rockets is generally around $1 million. Isn't that about where they're...
And there's a lot of different ways to look at that too, because the more customers that they have, the more customers that they can have per rocket means that the cost gets splayed amongst all the customers, right? So then per customer, it's a little bit cheaper. Mm-hmm. And we've talked with a couple of these companies, and they do have a new focus. It's sort of this is going to sound silly. They're kind of like the millennial generation of rockets. They have
oh my God, I can't even. I just can't go on this rocket. I can't even.
They have a larger focus on reusability. Right? And so as opposed to sort of some of the older space sort of rockets of like, I don't know, we'll just make it out of steel and it'll be great, and we'll just make it and it'll be great, and it'll be in the end bottom of the ocean, and who cares? Nobody goes to the bottom of the ocean. There's now
Jeff
anymore.
Bezos does, yeah.
Now anymore, I think some of these up and coming companies have a little bit more of a .com sort of view on the world and what they're launching, how to make it, how to reuse it, and how to keep it cheap and flexible as a company. I think they actually do have a really good market idea there.
But it was the Go ahead, Dada.
I think there's a lot to be said for the competition that's available here too. Is with 22 different manufacturers of small launch services, the cost is going to come down. We have more than 22 automakers. There aren't 3 automakers.
Right.
Right. So the more people that are in it, the easier it's going to be. Everybody learns from each other, and the cost comes down to the point. To the point where maybe you could get a launch for $100,000, including your 3U CubeSat.
But the number, Dutta 2, I forgot what we're calling him now, that Space Mike mentioned was 15,000, or
30 grand for launch and payload.
Sure, but
for the satellite and the launch.
For the satellite and the launch, let's make that an even $50,000. That seems like a good nice round number. We're nowhere near that, right? I mean, we're still a long way away from that.
Not yet.
Well, kind of. I mean, if you're talking 10 million, what is it, 10 million per launch? Is that what we're saying? Those are the numbers that we're going off of?
No,
the number that a lot of these companies is putting out there is like 1 million. That's the cost right now. But some of them had a lot less prices before, when their stuff was still paper rockets. So that's why I'm saying, anywhere from up to 1 million to 300 million, because the prices keep coming up. And I'm using an extreme value here. I'm thinking of like a United Launch Alliance launch. Most of them are around the 300 million range. So with that, if it stays around 1 million, great. And if they have something like with the whole rideshare program, if you have something that can deliver 100 1U CubeSats at once, then sharing the cost across all those different customers could actually make it so that your particular mission cost is only 50,000, even if the rocket launch is only $1 million.
Right. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know. I see it. I'm surprised you don't see it.
I'm not saying I don't see it. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Okay.
And Dutta, we got a little bit of your opinion, but what's your overall? Do you think this is a .com boom bust model, or you think this is a viable market that will succeed beyond its initial phase?
I'm not certain. You have to have a market in order to be able to continue to produce things like this. If the cost comes down, I think the share of the market will be increased, as opposed to big giant satellites that only governments can purchase and launch. But if companies are actually able to come through and be able to launch a payload for $1 million, even $1 million, there's a lot more companies that can do what they want to do with even like a 9U small sat.
You do a lot with that.
Yeah, you can do a lot with it instead of having to go to a big giant satellite and a larger launch provider. You can have a lot of companies doing more with smaller satellites, as opposed to everybody having to funnel into the larger satellites. And everybody is currently kind of paper rocket stage, but if somebody can do it, and maybe there's a couple people that can kind of break through at the same time, you'll see some competition there, and yeah, it could potentially be a viable business market.
Sir Gamelot in the chat room says .com was getting funded for stuff that didn't and couldn't exist. So unless they fund only paper rockets, no worries about bursting. I think that potentially there is a little bit of that potential, because there's a lot of Elon came in and basically said to the market, you're not doing this right, you're not doing this good enough. And he brought a .com Silicon Valley kind of spin to the aerospace market. And so I think what I'm starting to see, and maybe I'm wrong, but I would love to actually know your opinion. I'm starting to see a lot of these .com entrepreneurs who really don't know much about space trying to enter this market because they see other successful Silicon Valley people going in, and maybe not fully understanding what is possible in space, or timelines, or...
Sure, but, laws of physics don't change, right?
All right.
And don't forget that almost twice SpaceX was on the verge of going bankrupt and closing their doors because they had multiple issues and hurdles that they needed to
But I don't think
overcome.
Silicon Valley sees that part, right? They see the successful entrepreneur building really cool things.
Well, Elon says he's not a business owner. He just wants it's a collective of people that want to do the same thing, right?
Sure.
So
I haven't heard him say that, but I'll take your word for it. I don't know.
I'd have to look up the source, but it was something along those lines. He's not trying to be a business. He's not trying to run a business. He's gathering a collective of people that have the same goal. He doesn't run SpaceX like a business. You just get it done and do the thing, and the money will come.
So this came from the Too Wicked via Jeff Faust. Prices for a full launch on Firefly would be $8 million. Rocket Lab would be $4.9 million, and Virgin Galactic is less than $10 million.
Wow.
So, you know, I don't know where I got that $1 million number from, but clearly it's not right. Maybe that was the target number they're trying to hit, but at, you know, we'll call that $8 million. We'll call it like $7 million, $7 million average, somewhere in there. Is that still, even if you, I don't know how much payload they can bring up, or how many cubesats, how many rack units of cubesats you'd be able to bring up on one of those rockets. But, you know, as SpaceMight brought up, you divide by that number, right? So your 7 million average price divided by the average number of cubesats you can bring up, and that would be the cost per launch to bring up. And I'm having a nagging suspicion, at least at first, these numbers are going to be too high. And can the market get over that initial hurdle as they try to figure out how to drive their costs down to something that they can sustain? Go ahead.
It doesn't necessarily speak to what you're saying per se, but it was interesting. If the prices for full launch for Firefly is $8 million, what they got from NASA was $5.5. If the cost for full launch for Rocket Lab's full launch is $4.9 million, they got $6.9 million. And if full launch for Virgin Galactic is less than $10 million, they only got $4.7 million. At first, it sounded the numbers to me were about half, and that's, in some cases that is not the case. Particularly Rocket Lab saying that their full launch would be 4.9, and they got more than that, 6.9, awarded to them from NASA. So I don't know where the numbers are coming from necessarily, at least on that side, but it's interesting.
As Amur Tiger in the chat room brings up, just trying to point out that making a real rocket, just like having a functioning company, isn't the final hurdle. It's reaching the profitability threshold, becoming a profitable company. So I guess that's ultimately the question I'm going to throw to you, the chat room, before we go to break here is, do you think these companies, it's not going to just be the launcher market, right? I mean, they're the visible part of this whole thing, because launching rockets is a very visible thing that you notice. It's where most amount of high-profile problems can occur because giant controlled fireball.
Right.
It's not just the launch services provider, it's the entire industry, the small sat market. Now, I actually never gave my opinion. I actually do think that there's a viable market here, but I think we're going to have to shake it out a little bit to figure out what's actually viable and what's not. And we will see some innovative, really cool things coming out of it over the next decade, but we do need to get some of these launchers online and driving these costs down before we can do that, because spending $15,000 on your little itty-bitty satellite and then spending an obscene amount of money to get it into space, like 4 or 5x what it took to actually build the thing, that's backwards.
Yeah.
Right? So we need to, as Mike said, get those costs down so they're equal, or even ideally less, right? If the less expensive it is to get things into space, the more industry we can get up there, the more cool things we can start to do up there, because the more people that maybe have great ideas but can't afford to get up there can actually now start to execute on their plans. That's my opinion. I'd love to know your opinion. What do you think? Is this a .com boom, .com bust? What's going to happen there? Look at that. We actually got that was a really wicked good job. That was a great topic. We got a whole middle segment out of that. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, comments from our last show. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Tomorrow. And before we get into comments from our last show, I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who have helped to make this specific segment to this episode happen. These are the people who contributed. What was that?
I know it was magical, though.
It was like, oh, patrons. These are people who have
Now we have to do that every time.
Completely derailed my train of thought. I have no idea how much $2.50 or more to this specific episode. The Patreon Plus subscribers also get access to After Dark as soon as we make it available. Your name in the show, obviously, at least one time for that amount, and a bunch of other really cool things as well. But there's more. If you want to just get your name in the show, that costs as little as 1 penny. That's right, as little as 1 penny helps contribute to the show. You can head over to patreon.com/TMRO to find out more on how you can crowdfund the show and all the different reward levels and things that we have access for there. All right, let's go ahead and get started with some of those comments. First up from Raymond.
This one comes from Raymond Earl off of YouTube. Why don't they use escape towers for cargo missions? Surely the expense is far less than the loss of cargo.
Well, so I assume that like a launch abort system
Right.
for both Cygnus and Dragon, they lost the spacecraft. They had an issue with the rocket, and you lost the cargo. So why not just pull it away? Well, you do take a payload hit with that, right? So depending upon the launch abort system, there's extra added weight that goes with that, which means you can bring less stuff up with you.
Right.
That's about it. I guess because there aren't humans on board, they don't.
Sure, but I mean,
There's cost involved as well.
there is, but a lot of times a launch abort system is going to dump the capsule into the ocean.
Sure.
And one thing that has been said many times before, if there's one thing that rockets don't like, it's salt water.
Yeah, but I think the point is you would then save the payload.
Sure,
So
you
while-
save a lot of the payload, but the capsule itself is still
Yeah,
ruined.
but the point is the stuff that it is. But the payload itself, the 100 million or however much millions of dollars of payload that's going up, all of that's saved, right? You go capture the capsule,
Yeah.
you take the payload out, like all those students'
Can we
experiments.
play a game of Capture the Castle? Sorry.
All those student experiments that were lost twice,
Right.
You could save those and drop them onto a new capsule, assuming that the G-forces don't
I
destroy
was
them.
going to say, yeah, in theory, assuming that they
So I know that
no.
SpaceX mentioned some things on recoverability and in an anomaly. I assume others are working towards something as well. It's not actually a bad idea, assuming that's what you mean. You said escape towers, which I generally think of as the astronaut escape system.
Oh, right.
And that wouldn't apply here. So I assume you mean like a launch abort
Abort
system.
system.
Yeah. All right, next up.
This one comes from Scott Hersey. Yeah, Hersey, off of YouTube as well. Sorry. Tomorrow better than Space Camp? Well, I mean, tomorrow's amazing, and I watched it at Space Camp every time I go. But the last time I checked, you guys don't have spacecraft simulators.
So first off, Scott, thank you for watching tomorrow at what was
Space
the
Camp.
sigh for, Mike? He's all like,
He's just
They
jealous.
don't-
If we did, tomorrow would be perfect.
He's just jealous.
Space Mike wants us to have simulators. All right. Well, we kind of do in a way. So first off, thank you for watching tomorrow at Space Camp, and I encourage everyone who goes to Space Camp to make them watch tomorrow episodes live. And if you do that in the chat room, make sure you let us know. Or if actually, this applies to any large group. If you force encourage a group of people to watch this show.
Our entire peanut gallery is laughing right now.
Let us know, and we will say hi to your group live on the air, which is
Yes.
kind of fun and cool. The second part is, we are Disney nerds, and so there is the Mission Space Ride at Epcot, which is a what?
Keep going.
No, here's my thought process. Here's how we get it so that tomorrow has a simulator.
I hope you all hear this before he says it, because keep going.
We should have like a Tomorrow Con or something at Epcot.
There
Oh
it
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. We
There
need
it
to
is.
make sure the community is
there.
large enough. Yeah, there it is.
Yep.
Tomorrow Con at Epcot, and then we can all go and ride the Mission Space Ride like over and over and over again, and then we would be more awesome. We'd be more awesome. I think that classifies as. I don't think I've sold Mike, but we would definitely be more awesome.
You've barely sold me on it.
It's a great idea.
Next question or comment comes from Stephen Thompson, also off of YouTube. As a moon firster, I think the best thing that could come out of Moonspike will be people wondering if these guys can build a rocket in their garage and send something to the moon. What could we be doing if we used real rockets like Falcon Heavy or Space Launch System? Real, of course, being in quotes.
Yeah, I mean, what defines a real rocket versus a fake rocket? I don't think that's fair. But yeah, I mean,
Paper versus physical?
yeah, but I mean, Yeah. So I looked up the.
It's a good point, though. I appreciate that. Like, I don't know, these guys just built something in their garage and sent something to the moon. Why isn't anybody making real rockets and sending stuff to the moon?
I actually do worry a little bit about the garage rocket community because, yeah, it's a little more dangerous than the garage computer community, I think. Slightly more combustive.
Y'all are lucky I don't have a garage. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. It's people like Dutta that make me scared of rocket garage, whatever I just said. All right, so yeah, actually, it would be kind of cool to see. Man, I go back and forth. So in one side, you know, it's kind of cool to see a small group of ragtag kids basically build a rocket out of nothing, send it to the moon, and do something. That is kind of cool. Flip side of that is, do we really need another launcher? Go, Mike.
Is Moonspike actually building a rocket? I thought all they were doing was just building a lander, and maybe just the compartment of it, like the actual rocket lander section of it. I don't know. I haven't heard much out of Moonspike for a long time, so I have no idea what their progress or anything about
On the
them is going on.
Kickstarter, it sounded like they were building the whole thing. The rocket, the lander, and the spike is my understanding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, they have the spike.
Why are you giggling, Dutta?
They,
All right, awkward
It's not
after
after
dark
dark yet.
comment. All
Okay.
right, fair. Also, I looked them up earlier today just to see how they're doing. If it is a program that you're interested in, they need some help. Right now, it does not look like they have like 15 days remaining, and they're not. I think they're like 13% funded or something. So they need a lot of help. If that's something that you're interested in helping them out with, just search for Moonspike on Kickstarter. All right, moving along.
this one comes from Dwarven Barbarian Rage.
That is a great username.
Dwarven
Barbarian Rage. Yeah, it's awesome.
Also off of YouTube, Moonspike should team up with Space VR and send a VR cam to orbit the moon. That would be great.
That actually would be kind of cool.
Yeah,
I'm not going to lie, having a VR
Yeah, no,
camera that downlinks,
totes agree.
I think that'd be awesome.
Yep,
Yep.
I'd support that.
I think that is a great comment. That is a great idea.
It's a great username.
That is a great username. We like you.
All right.
Moving right along.
You know what? I need to apologize at the chat room real quick. I was confusing Moonspike with Golden Spike. Thank you, Instructor, for pointing that out. That's why I was just like, wait, all they're building is a lander. What are you guys talking about?
There you go. Yep. All right.
Sorry about that.
Next up.
The gaming scientist off of Reddit says, "You mean the episode wasn't just named Untitled?"
For those who missed it, I continually work on finding ways to post the episodes faster and more efficiently so that you guys get your Space Geek on faster and more efficiently. And one of the things I did was we use Episode Pro from Telestream to compress it. And there's a little bit of editing that happens. Fundamentally, the only thing that really we edit is if we screw up a break, we edit that, and then we edit the intro in, and that's basically it.
Because we do the intro last.
Because we do the intro last. Otherwise, the show, mistakes and all, you get 1-to-1, because I think it's more fun that way. So we're done editing. We take it out of Final Cut, drop it. Episode automatically picks it up and then drops it on the desktop. And then it used to be that it dropped it there and then waited for me to upload it. And I was like, okay, we're going to figure out how to automate this. So I figured out how to make episode then upload it automatically to YouTube. And I said, make sure that this is set as private. / I thought I set the button that said, make sure this is set to private. And apparently it didn't work. And so it uploaded the episode as untitled and then compressed it and gave it to the whole world as untitled. And that's what happened. So we're about to see if this episode does the same thing. Because I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to see if it actually marks it as private.
You should label this one Untitled.
That would be great. I'm not going to, but that's a fantastic idea. So, for those wondering what happened last week, because it was like that for hours before I caught it, that's why it was labeled Untitled, and that's why it shows as Untitled on Facebook and certain Reddit posts, because that's the title it grabbed when it pulled it in. All right, moving along. I should label it Untitled. Untitled-830.
This one comes from James Moore, also known as Quarkspin, off of Twitter and in our
Oh
chat
God,
room.
worlds colliding.
Tomorrow, how fun was it to finally meet chat room friend Uncle BS IRL? Tremendous fun.
Oh my God.
Quarkspin, you are entirely too nice of a human being.
What? Uncle BS is fun.
Uncle BS can be fun.
Uncle BS is a hoot and a half.
Uncle BS can totally be a hoot and a half.
Oh. He is. He's a hoot and a half. And yeah, actually, I think it's pretty cool that Citizens of Tomorrow are teaming up.
Actually, the first time I read this, I said, wait, really? They've both
Yeah,
been in our chat rooms for years.
Yeah, I'm surprised neither one of them had met anyone else, but it is pretty cool that everyone met up. Although you're going to have an opportunity to meet up at the TomorrowCon at Epcot, where you're also going to be able to ride Mission Space, our flight simulator, simulating 2.5 G's worth of gravity and your mission to to Mars. Excuse me. It is go time. So there you go.
Wow.
That's going to be your opportunity to meet.
TomorrowCon 2016.
2016. Wow, that's way too far in the future. 2015. December 25th. That's not going to happen.
Nope,
All
that's
right.
not going to happen.
All right,
Don't
moving
start
along.
making those promises. This one comes from John Knight, also known as Green Jim 2.
Green Jim 2? Green Jim 2.
We're going to go with that off of Twitter. Says, very first rough cut, but try adding this calendar ID to other calendars lists. FD1ENK1TMF2E28MU9QT9KHGGS4 at group.calendar.google.com.
That was fantastic.
Thank you. That is the first time I read that out loud.
In fact, I'm not even going to post the link in the show notes. Yes. You're going to have to copy it from what you just said and from the screen.
And I did it correctly.
You're welcome, Internet.
Woohoo!
Yeah, actually so John built a Google Calendar based on the Launch Library API. So huge thank you for making that happen. We have other great applications that are in the Launch Library, and if you go to launchlibrary.net, which is the official URL of Launch Library, you'll see there's a new header across the top. One of them is the app gallery, which will be coming soon, and that will be showing off all the different things that are based on Launch Library. Right now, I can say there is an app in the Android marketplace. There's now this Google Calendar as well. Nice. The Roku Tomorrow app also uses it. Mm-hmm. So huge thank you to all of our librarians who help keep that up to date. It's a volunteer army of great people who are, I would say, I think we have the most accurate and up-to-date library of launches, of upcoming launches in the world right now. Even with the Chinese launches, which is really hard to do.
Although if anyone wants to start adding in the hashtags for all of the international space launch or provider, like who are those guys? Dude, that was amazing. When I found that, I was like, and this is real. And I felt like last week tonight for a whole second.
The Roku app does work now. And because Matt Clark UK in the chat room asked if the Roku, it does work, although there's a bug and it's putting the space pods in the main channel for some reason, but whatever, you can still at least watch space pods. And I had a point. One thing I do want to change in the Launch Library is we have librarians keeping everything up to date, like to the minute. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like go, no-go status, all that's up to date. But what we're missing now is we need the mission data. So it's like, hey, this rocket is launching with this payload. What's the payload? We don't tell you what that is. We have the option to do that in the library, but we don't actually tell you. So if you're interested in helping just kind of backfill in, like, oh, well, I see a launch was added. It has the SES-8 satellite, for example. I'll write a quick little one-paragraph blurb on what SES-8 is. I would very much appreciate that. Hit me up at benjamin@tmro.tv, and we'll hook you up with access to our Slack account and a bunch of other things. Just pop in like once a week. Make sure that everything has a description attached to it. That'd be very, very appreciated. All right, that is our show for this week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. After Dark is up next. If you're watching live, continue watching. You'll be able to see that. Otherwise, if you're a Patreon Plus subscriber, that'll be available shortly. And for everyone else, it'll be available in about 4 weeks. Thank you so much. See you next week. Oh, Dada. Oh.